December in Chicago meant bone-deep cold that turned your breath into visible clouds and made every exposed inch of skin feel like it was being pricked with needles. I'd been chasing a lead on corporate fraud for 3 weeks, following money trails that zigzagged through shell companies and offshore accounts. My editor at the Tribune wanted results, and I was determined to deliver them even if it meant spending my evenings in parking garages interviewing nervous accountants. The underground parking structure beneath the Maxwell Street district wasn't where I'd planned to be at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. My source, a mid-level executive at Meridian Holdings, had insisted on this location. Anonymous, he'd said. Safe, he'd promised. Looking around at the concrete pillars casting long shadows under flickering fluorescent tubes, I was starting to question his definition of both those words. I waited by my beat-up Honda Civic, checking my phone every 30 seconds. Amanda had texted earlier asking if I wanted to grab drinks after work. I'd lied and said I was covering a boring city council meeting. My best friend would have tried to talk me out of meeting a stranger in an isolated location, and she would have been absolutely right to do so. But good journalism required calculated risks, and this story was too important to let slip through my fingers because of reasonable caution. A black Mercedes pulled into the garage, its headlights sweeping across the empty spaces. Finally, I straightened, tucking my phone into my jacket pocket and pulling out the small voice recorder I kept for interviews. The car parked 3 spots away, engine still running. That should have been my first warning sign. The second came when 3 more vehicles entered the garage in quick succession. 2 SUVs and another sedan. All black, all expensive. They positioned themselves at the exits, blocking any escape routes. My source never got out of the Mercedes. Instead, 4 men emerged from the other vehicles. They wore dark suits and moved with the kind of coordinated precision that screamed professional security. Or worse. I took a step backward toward my car, hand fumbling for my keys. One of the men noticed the movement and pointed directly at me. 2 others immediately changed trajectory, closing the distance between us with frightening speed. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm just a journalist meeting a source. We know who you are, Miss Turner." The voice came from behind me, and I spun to find a 5th man had somehow appeared without my noticing. He was younger than the others, maybe early 30s, with dark hair styled back from his face, and eyes so dark they looked black in the dim lighting. He wore an expensive charcoal suit, with a white dress shirt open at the collar, revealing a thick gold chain. Even in this terrible lighting, even with my heart pounding and adrenaline flooding my system, I registered that he was devastatingly handsome, which made the situation infinitely more terrifying. "I haven't done anything wrong," I said, hating how my voice shook slightly. "I'm just doing my job. Your job brought you to witness something you shouldn't have seen." He gestured toward the Mercedes, where a briefcase was being transferred between the original driver and a man I now recognized as Victor Castellano, a city alderman who'd been under investigation for corruption. "That transaction? The one you've been recording on your phone for the past 90 seconds? That's a problem." My hand was still in my jacket pocket, fingers wrapped around my phone. He knew. Of course he knew. "Take her phone," the man ordered. One of the security team stepped forward, and I had no choice but to surrender it. He examined the screen, then handed it to his boss. "You've been busy, Miss Turner. Photos, video, quite the documentation. Are you going to kill me?" The question came out before I could stop it. He looked genuinely surprised. "Kill you? No. That would be unnecessarily messy, and draw exactly the kind of attention we're trying to avoid." He deleted my recordings with quick, efficient motions, then pocketed my phone. "But I can't let you leave with what you've seen either." That puts us in a complicated position. 2 of his men moved to flank me. I considered screaming, but who would hear in an empty parking garage? I thought about running, but they'd positioned themselves to cut off every exit. I'd walked directly into a trap, and there was no clever way out. "Put her in the car," the man instructed. "We'll continue this conversation somewhere more private." The SUV ride took 40 minutes through Chicago's northwest suburbs, ending at a property that could only be described as a mansion. High walls, gated entrance, security cameras visible at every angle. The men escorted me inside with hands on my arms. Not rough, but firm enough to make clear that cooperation was my only option. The interior was elegantly decorated with a mix of modern and classical Italian furniture. Art that looked expensive, hung on walls painted in warm neutrals. This wasn't a warehouse or abandoned building where bad things happened to unlucky witnesses. This was someone's home. They led me to a study lined with bookshelves, sat me in a leather chair across from a massive desk, and waited. Minutes stretched into an uncomfortable silence before the man from the garage entered, closing the door behind him. Chloe Turner, 27, investigative journalist for the Chicago Tribune, he said, reading from a file that had appeared on his desk. Parents deceased. Car accident when you were 19. No siblings. Graduated from Northwestern with a journalism degree. Minor in economics. You've been chasing the Meridian Holdings story for 6 weeks. He looked up. How close were you to publishing? I don't have to answer your questions. You're absolutely right. You don't. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with an intensity that made me want to squirm. But you're here, in my home, because you witnessed a transaction between my organization and a city official. That makes you a liability. I'm trying to determine what kind of liability. Your organization, I repeated. Understanding clicked into place. Your Mafia. I prefer to think of my family's business as diversified interests with international reach, but yes, if you want to use crude terminology. He didn't seem bothered by the accusation. My name is Nicholas Versiani. And now we have a problem, Miss Turner, because you can't unknow what you've seen. My phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. Probably Amanda wondering why I wasn't answering. Nicholas pulled it out, glanced at the screen, then showed it to me. Amanda's name and photo filled the display. Your friend is worried about you, he observed. Should we let her know you're safe? Don't involve her in this. I have no intention of involving anyone else. This situation is complicated enough. He silenced the phone and set it on his desk. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here tonight while I verify your story and determine the best path forward. Tomorrow we'll have a more detailed conversation about your future. You mean whether I'm going to disappear permanently? That would be the inefficient solution. His phone rang, and he answered with a curt greeting in Italian. The conversation lasted maybe 30 seconds before his expression changed completely. All the cold calculation replaced by something raw and human. Fear. Grief. He responded in the same language, voice rougher now, then ended the call. He sat motionless for a long moment, and I watched the transformation from dangerous crime boss to someone who'd just received devastating news. What happened? I asked, and immediately wondered why I cared. My grandmother. He said it so quietly I almost didn't hear. She's been fighting cancer for 8 months. The doctors just called. She has days, maybe a week. She's asking for me. I'm sorry. He looked at me like he'd forgotten I was there. Then his phone rang again, and he answered in Italian, listened, and responded with increasing urgency. When he ended the call, he turned to study me with new intensity. My grandmother has one final wish before she dies, Nicholas said slowly. She wants to see me settled, happy, with someone who makes me want to build a life beyond just the business. He stood, walked around the desk, and crouched to my eye level. She wants to meet my girlfriend at our family's Christmas Eve dinner 2 weeks from tonight. I don't understand what that has to do with me. It has everything to do with you, Miss Turner. Because you're going to be that girlfriend. The guest bedroom where they installed me was larger than my entire apartment. King-sized bed with silk sheets. Attached bathroom with marble countertops. A window overlooking manicured gardens lit by subtle landscape lighting. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. I didn't sleep. How could I? 24 hours ago, my biggest problem had been meeting my article deadline. Now I was being held captive by the Mafia and forced into a fake relationship with a crime boss whose grandmother was dying. The absurdity of the situation would have been funny if I wasn't so genuinely scared. Around 7 a.m., someone knocked on my door. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes entered carrying a tray of breakfast. Fresh fruit, pastries that smelled amazing, coffee that probably cost more than my usual grocery budget. She introduced herself as Maria, the housekeeper, and informed me in lightly accented English that Mr. Versiani would meet with me at 9 o'clock. I picked at the food, too anxious to really taste anything, then showered and changed back into yesterday's clothes. My phone was still with Nicholas, which meant Amanda had no way to reach me. She'd be worried by now, probably calling my editor, maybe even considering filing a missing persons report. At precisely 9, Maria returned to escort me downstairs. We wound through hallways decorated with family photos. Nicholas as a child with an elderly couple who must have been his grandparents. Formal portraits of people in expensive clothing. Candid shots from various celebrations. No parents anywhere in the collection, which lined up with what he'd said about losing them. Nicholas was waiting in the same study from last night, but daylight streaming through tall windows made everything look different. Less intimidating, more like an actual workspace. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black sweater, the gold chain still visible at his collar. Without the formal suit, he looked younger, more approachable. Still dangerously handsome, though. That hadn't changed. "Good morning, Miss Turner. I trust you slept well." "I didn't sleep at all, actually. Turns out being kidnapped by the Mafia doesn't promote restful nights. Technically, you witnessed a crime and were detained for questioning. Kidnapping implies ransom demands and violence, neither of which are part of this situation." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please, sit. We have a great deal to discuss." I remained standing. "I want my phone back. My friend Amanda is probably losing her mind wondering where I am." "Your friend, Amanda Wells, also a journalist, currently trying to reach you via text, email, and phone calls." He retrieved my device from his desk drawer and held it up. 16 missed calls, 23 text messages, and she's apparently threatened to contact the police if you don't respond by noon. "Then let me respond." "You will. But first, we need to establish the parameters of our arrangement." He unlocked my phone, which shouldn't have been possible given my password, but clearly this man had resources, and began typing. "You're going to tell her that you're covering an investigative story out of state. Something urgent that came up suddenly. You'll be unavailable for the next 2 weeks, but you're perfectly safe. She won't believe that. Make her believe it. Your friend's safety and yours depends on maintaining the fiction that everything is normal in your life." He finished typing and showed me the screen. The message was convincing, casual enough to sound like me, specific enough to address Amanda's concerns. "Send this. Now." I took the phone, read through his words again, and added a few small touches that Amanda would recognize as authentically mine. A reference to an inside joke, a complaint about hotel coffee, a promise to bring back the tacky souvenirs she collected from every trip. Then I hit send before I could second-guess myself. There. Happy? Satisfied. Not happy. There's a distinction. He pocketed my phone again. "Now we can discuss the actual situation. My grandmother, Lucia Versiani, is 83 years old. She emigrated from Sicily in 1967, married my grandfather, and helped build our family's business from nothing. She's the matriarch, the moral center, the person everyone in our organization respects above all others, including you, especially me. She raised me after my parents died in a territorial dispute 6 years ago. Everything I am, everything I've built, exists because she gave me the foundation to do so." His voice carried genuine emotion, grief barely contained beneath professional composure. "She's been fighting pancreatic cancer for 8 months. The treatment stopped working 3 weeks ago. The doctors say she has days, maybe a week if we're fortunate. I'm sorry for your loss. Truly. But I still don't understand why that means I have to pretend to be your girlfriend. Because for the past year, every time I visit her, she asks the same questions. When will I settle down? When will I bring someone special to meet her? When will I stop dedicating every moment to business and actually build a life worth living?" He stood, walking to the window overlooking the gardens. "Last month, I told her I'd met someone. It was easier than explaining that relationships don't exactly fit into my lifestyle. She was so happy, Miss Turner. For the first time since her diagnosis, she smiled like she used to. So you lied to a dying woman, and now you need me to maintain that lie. Crudely put, but essentially accurate." He turned back to face me. "Our family's Christmas Eve dinner is a significant event. All the extended family attends, along with our closest business associates. It's tradition, dating back 3 generations. My grandmother has been planning this year's dinner for months, determined to host one final celebration. And she's insistent on meeting the woman who's apparently captured my attention. Why not just hire an actress? Someone who actually wants to do this, because an actress would be performing. My grandmother is perceptive, Miss Turner. She'd see through a performance immediately. But you're genuinely angry with me, genuinely uncomfortable with this situation, genuinely afraid of what I represent. That authenticity will read as real because it is real. He returned to his desk, pulling out a contract. I'm offering you $50,000 to play this role for 2 weeks. Attend the Christmas Eve dinner. Convince my grandmother that we're in a relationship, and then you're free to leave with the money in your life. $50,000. That was nearly a year's salary. That was my student loans paid off completely. That was financial security I'd never experienced in my entire adult life. And if I refuse, then I can't let you leave knowing what you know about my organization's operations. You'd remain here indefinitely, until I could determine a permanent solution to the liability you represent. His eyes held mine, and I saw no hint of bluff in their dark depths. I'm not threatening you, Miss Turner. I'm explaining reality. You witnessed a felony transaction involving a government official. That makes you a potential witness, which makes you a threat. Cooperating with this arrangement is the path that leads to your freedom. So, it's not really a choice at all. All choices involve weighing options and consequences. You're choosing the option with the best outcome for both of us. I looked down at the contract he'd slid across the desk. Legal language, terms and conditions, payment schedules. This man had actually formalized his kidnapping/fake relationship scheme. The absurdity hit me again, but this time I recognized it for what it was. A man desperate to give his dying grandmother one final moment of peace, regardless of the methods required. I'll need my own clothes. My apartment key is in my jacket pocket back in my car, which I assume your people have already retrieved from that parking garage. Already done. We collected your vehicle last night and had it transported here. Your keys, wallet, and other personal belongings are in the guest room. And yes, we can send people to your apartment to collect appropriate clothing and necessities. I'll give you a list, but I want to call Amanda. Actually speak to her, not just text. You'll have supervised calls each evening. 5 minutes, general reassurances. Nothing that reveals your actual location or situation. This is insane. Yes, he agreed simply, but it's the situation we're both in. Are you going to sign the contract, Miss Turner? I picked up the pen lying beside the papers. My hand trembled slightly as I signed my name on the designated line, officially agreeing to the most bizarre proposition of my life. Excellent. Now we can begin your preparation. Nicholas pulled out a leather-bound notebook. You need to learn everything about me. My history, my preferences, my family, my business associations. We need to develop a believable story for how we met, how long we've been together, what our relationship dynamic looks like. My grandmother will ask detailed questions, and inconsistent answers will raise suspicions we can't afford. How long have you supposedly been dating this fictional girlfriend? 3 months. We met at a gallery opening in October. You're an art journalist, not investigative. Safer story, less likely to intersect with people who might recognize you from your actual work. He started writing notes. We'll keep your real name and general background, changing only the specific details that might complicate things. And you expect me to memorize all of this in less than 2 weeks? You're an investigative journalist. Research and retention are literally your profession. He slid the notebook across the desk. Start reading. We'll begin practical exercises this afternoon. The notebook contained pages of information. Nicholas's childhood in Sicily before his family immigrated. His parents' deaths in what was described as a business dispute. His grandmother's role in raising him. Names and relationships of dozens of family members and associates. Birth dates, preferences, habits, histories. It was overwhelming. This is like studying for the world's most dangerous exam. Accurate comparison. Failure means my grandmother dies knowing I lied to her, and you remain trapped in a situation neither of us wants prolonged. He checked his watch. You have 3 hours to review the basic materials. We'll have lunch together in the dining room, where you'll practice casual conversation as if we're actually a couple. Roberto, My second in command will observe and provide feedback. You're going to critique my fake girlfriend performance? Would you prefer to fail in front of my grandmother? Roberto's blunt, but he's not dying of cancer. Better to make mistakes in practice than during the actual event. Nicholas stood, apparently considering our meeting concluded. Maria will show you to the library, where you can study without interruption. Read everything, Miss Turner. Your freedom depends on this working. I wanted to argue, to push back against this insanity. But what option did I have? I'd signed the contract. I'd witnessed too much. I was trapped in this beautiful mansion with a handsome criminal who needed me to lie to his dying grandmother. The library was exactly what you'd expect from a mansion owned by someone with virtually unlimited resources. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, comfortable seating, natural light flooding through tall windows. I settled into a leather armchair and started reading. Nicholas Versiani was 32 years old. Born in Palermo, Sicily, to parents who'd continued the family business his grandparents started after immigrating to Chicago. Educated at private schools, fluent in Italian and English, degree in economics from a university I'd never heard of, but that Google informed me was extremely prestigious and expensive. His parents, Giovanni and Francesca Versiani, died 6 years ago when a rival organization targeted their vehicle. Nicholas had been 26, already deeply involved in the family business, already being groomed to take over leadership. The details were intimate and specific. His favorite food was his grandmother's homemade pasta. He collected Italian first edition books. He preferred wine over liquor. He'd never been married but had been in 2 serious relationships that ended badly. He hated winter, but tolerated Chicago's brutal cold for his grandmother's sake. He spoke to her daily, visited her twice weekly, and would apparently commit fraud and kidnapping to give her peace in her final days. 3 hours passed faster than I expected. Maria appeared to escort me to the dining room, where Nicholas was already seated at one end of a table that could have accommodated 20 people comfortably. Roberto stood near the wall, arms crossed, expression skeptical. Miss Turner, please, sit beside me rather than at the opposite end. We're supposed to be intimate, remember? Nicholas gestured to the chair immediately to his right. I sat, acutely aware of Roberto's scrutiny and Nicholas's proximity. This close, I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Maria served lunch, pasta with a cream sauce that tasted incredible despite my complete lack of appetite. Nicholas ate calmly, occasionally asking me questions about the material I'd read. When I answered correctly, he'd nod approval. When I hesitated or got details wrong, Roberto would make disapproving sounds. Your grandmother's name is Lucia, middle name Margarita, maiden name Catalano. She's 83, born in 1942 in a village outside Palermo. She married your grandfather Antonio in 1964, immigrated to Chicago in 1967. They had 3 children. Your father Giovanni was the oldest, then your Aunt Rosaria, then your uncle Giuseppe. She's been widowed for 12 years since Antonio died of a heart attack. Good. And how did we meet? Gallery opening in October. You were there for business? I was covering it for the art section of a magazine. We started talking about a sculpture you hated, bonded over shared terrible taste in modern art, and you asked for my number. Who asked for whose number? Roberto interjected. I looked at Nicholas, unsure. He raised an eyebrow, waiting. You asked for mine, I decided. You're confident enough to make the first move, and it fits your personality profile better. Acceptable, Roberto said grudgingly, but you need to sound more certain. Hesitation indicates lying. The afternoon continued in this fashion. Questions, corrections, uncomfortable proximity to Nicholas as we practiced the small intimacies that couples display naturally. His hand on my shoulder as he stood behind my chair. My hand on his arm as I made a point during conversation. The casual touches felt alien and forced, which Roberto noted immediately. You flinch every time he touches you. That reads as fear, not affection. Maybe because I am afraid, I snapped. Maybe because this entire situation is terrifying and unnatural. Then get over it quickly, Roberto shot back. Mrs. Versiani isn't stupid. She'll notice if her grandson's girlfriend acts like he's dangerous. He is dangerous. To his enemies. not to the woman he supposedly loves. Roberto moved closer, his presence intimidating. You need to understand something, Miss Turner. Nicholas would never hurt someone under his protection. He couldn't save his parents, couldn't save his sister. Those failures haunt him. He'd die before letting harm come to anyone he claims to care about. I looked at Nicholas, who'd gone very still. Your sister? That's not in the notebook, he said quietly. No, because it's not something I discuss. But Roberto's right. You should know. Nicholas set down his fork, appetite apparently gone. 5 years ago, my younger sister Carla was killed in a kidnapping attempt. She was 21, studying at university, supposed to be safe under our security protocols. She wasn't involved in the business, wasn't part of any conflicts, just an innocent who died because someone wanted to hurt me. The grief in his voice was raw and real, and suddenly this intimidating crime boss looked like a man who'd lost too much too young. I'm sorry, I didn't know. How could you? It's not the kind of thing we advertise. He stood abruptly. Let's take a break. You've absorbed a great deal of information today. We'll resume tomorrow morning. I watched him leave, Roberto following after giving me one final assessing look. Then I was alone in the massive dining room, surrounded by expensive furniture and family photographs that told stories of loss and survival. My phone buzzed. Nicholas had returned it during lunch. Amanda had responded to my message, still skeptical, but apparently reassured enough not to call the police. I typed out another casual update, hating every lying word, but understanding that truth would put her in danger. Maria appeared to escort me back to my room. You did well today, she said kindly. Mr. Nicholas is not an easy man, but he's a good man in ways that matter. He's holding me hostage to lie to his dying grandmother. He's desperate to give her peace before she dies. Sometimes good people do questionable things for the right reasons. She opened my bedroom door. Your belongings from your apartment arrived while you were at lunch. And Mr. Nicholas wanted me to tell you, if you need anything, ask. He means it. After she left, I found my suitcases stacked neatly in the corner. Someone had gone through my apartment, packed my clothes and toiletries, even grabbed my laptop. Looking through the familiar items felt surreal. Pieces of my real life transported into this strange new reality. I pulled out my phone and called Amanda, keeping it brief and casual despite the supervised call limitation. She believed my story about the out-of-state assignment, or at least pretended to believe it. When we hung up, guilt sat heavy in my chest. 2 weeks. I just had to survive 2 weeks of this elaborate deception, convince a dying woman that her grandson had found happiness, collect $50,000, and return to my normal life. How hard could it possibly be? The week passed in a strange rhythm of rehearsals, corrections, and increasingly natural interactions. By day 5, I could recite Nicholas's entire family tree without hesitation, knew his preferences in everything from music to architecture, and had memorized enough Italian phrases to hold basic conversations. Roberto's critiques became less frequent, which I took as grudging approval. But the real shift happened during our shopping trip. Nicholas insisted we needed to select appropriate clothing for the various Christmas events. Not just the main dinner, but family gatherings leading up to it. Church services, casual visits with his grandmother. I'd assumed he'd send me with Maria or one of his staff. But instead he drove us himself to an exclusive boutique in downtown Chicago that apparently stayed open late for special clients. The owner, a sophisticated woman named Elise, greeted Nicholas with familiar warmth. It's been too long, and this must be the famous Chloe I've heard about. I managed not to react visibly to being discussed by strangers, instead smiling like this was perfectly normal. Nicholas's hand settled naturally at the small of my back, as Elise led us through displays of designer clothing that probably cost more than my car. We need several outfits, Nicholas explained. Something elegant for Christmas Eve, something more casual for family dinners, appropriate church attire, and general winter wear. I have my own clothes, I protested quietly, as Elise began pulling pieces from racks. You have clothes suitable for your real life. This is a performance that requires a specific wardrobe. He turned to Elise. Show her the emerald dress first. It'll complement her eyes. The emerald dress was stunning. Silk that draped elegantly, neckline that was sophisticated without being revealing, cut that somehow made me look taller, and more graceful than I actually was. I stepped out of the dressing room feeling absurdly self-conscious, and Nicholas's expression when he saw me made my breath catch. "Perfect," he said quietly. "That one is essential. It's also probably more expensive than my monthly rent. Good thing you're not paying for it then." He stood, walking a slow circle around me. The attention should have felt objectifying, but instead it felt like an artist examining his work. "Elise, we'll take this one. Now show her the burgundy option." The afternoon continued in this fashion, me trying on clothing while Nicholas provided commentary with surprising expertise in women's fashion. The burgundy dress was purchased, along with a sophisticated charcoal pantsuit, a cream-colored dress perfect for church, designer jeans paired with cashmere sweaters in various shades, and winter coats that actually fit properly unlike my threadbare parka. "This is too much," I said during a break while Elise processed the purchases. "I'm only here for 2 weeks. 2 weeks where you need to convincingly portray someone who belongs in my world. That requires looking the part." He gestured to the mountain of shopping bags accumulating near the register. "Besides, the clothes are yours to keep afterward. Consider it part of your compensation. I don't want compensation in designer dresses. No, you want $50,000 and your freedom. The dresses are a bonus." He moved closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "You're doing well, Chloe. Better than I expected. The initial fear is fading. You're starting to actually engage with the role instead of just enduring it. Maybe I'm just a better actress than you gave me credit for. Maybe. Or maybe you're discovering that I'm not quite the monster you assumed I was." Before I could respond, his phone rang. He stepped away to answer, and his expression darkened immediately. The conversation was brief and entirely in Italian, but I caught enough words to recognize bad news. When he ended the call, he looked exhausted. "My grandmother had another episode. She's stable now, but the doctors are reducing her timeline projections. Days, not weeks." He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the careful styling. "We need to move up the family introduction. She's asking to meet you tomorrow." "Tomorrow? Nicholas, I'm not ready." "You'll have to be ready. She's insistent, and I can't deny her this." He returned to the register, pulling out a credit card. "Elise, we need everything delivered to my address within 2 hours. Include accessories, jewelry, shoes, whatever you think appropriate." The drive back to the mansion was tense and silent. I could feel Nicholas's anxiety radiating off him in waves. See how tightly he gripped the steering wheel. This powerful, controlled man was terrified of losing the one person who mattered most to him. "What do I need to know about meeting her?" I asked as we pulled through the gated entrance. "Be yourself. She responds to authenticity, not performance. But remember, she thinks we've been together 3 months, that I'm genuinely in love with you, that you've made me happier than I've been in years." He parked and turned to face me fully. "Can you do that? Can you make a dying woman believe her grandson has found something worth living for beyond just business and revenge?" The vulnerability in his question caught me completely off guard. "I'll do my best. That's all I can ask." That evening, instead of our usual supervised phone call with Amanda, Nicholas joined me in the library where I'd been reviewing family information one more time. He carried 2 glasses of wine and settled into the chair across from mine. "Tell me about Amanda," he said unexpectedly. "Why?" "Because my grandmother will ask about your friends, your life, the people who matter to you. If I don't know these details, inconsistencies will emerge." He sipped his wine. "So tell me, how long have you known her?" 5 years. We met in a journalism seminar at Northwestern, bonded over shared cynicism about corporate media, and ended up as roommates for 2 years before I got my current apartment. I accepted the wine glass he offered. She's the person who talked me into investigative work instead of playing it safe with lifestyle journalism. She's also the person who'll absolutely murder you if anything happens to me. Noted. What else should I know? We spent 2 hours talking, and somewhere in that conversation, something shifted. We stopped being captor and captive, stopped being crime boss and journalist, and became just 2 people sharing stories. I learned about his grandmother's immigration story, about building a life in a new country with nothing but determination and family bonds. He learned about my parents' death, about putting myself through college on scholarships and student loans, about the loneliness of having no family left. You're very much alone, he observed quietly. So are you. Despite being surrounded by people who work for you, loyalty bought through power isn't the same as genuine connection. He refilled our wine glasses. That's why my grandmother's wish matters so much. She wants to know I won't end up isolated, living only for the business, dying without anyone who actually cares about the man beneath the reputation. Is that what you want? Genuine connection? I stopped thinking about what I want years ago. Wanting things, caring about people. It makes you vulnerable, and vulnerability gets people killed in my world. He met my eyes. But yes, if circumstances were different, I would want that. The moment stretched between us, charged with unexpected intimacy. Then his phone rang, shattering the mood. He answered, listened, and his expression tightened. When did the package arrive? Pause. No, don't open it. I'll be right there. He stood quickly. Stay in this room. Lock the door behind me. Roberto will be outside within 2 minutes. What's happening? Someone sent an envelope to the front gate. It has your name on it. He was already moving toward the door. That means someone knows you're here, which means we have a serious security problem. After he left, I locked the door as instructed and waited. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, Roberto's voice came through the wood, telling me it was safe to open up. What was in the envelope? I asked as soon as I let him in. Photographs. You entering this property. You shopping with Nicholas today. You standing in the window of the guest room. Roberto's expression was grim.
The Albanian organization has been watching. They know about you, which makes you a target. The Albanians? I thought Nicholas's business was with city officials, and Nicholas's business involves many players, including rival organizations who'd love to find a weakness they can exploit. He gestured toward the hallway. Come with me. We're moving you to a more secure location within the house. The new room was in the center of the mansion. No windows, reinforced door.
It felt less like a bedroom and more like a bunker. Nicholas arrived 20 minutes later, looking darker than I'd ever seen him. This changes things, he said without preamble. The Albanians are escalating. They've been looking for leverage against our organization since we took over several waterfront territories they wanted. Finding out about you gives them exactly that leverage. So what do? We accelerate the timeline. Family dinner is now in 5 days instead of 2 weeks. We'll host it here where security is tightest. And you... He moved closer, and I saw genuine fear in his eyes. You don't leave this property under any circumstances until this is resolved. The Albanians have no problem targeting civilians to make their point. You're saying I'm in actual danger because of your business conflicts. Yes. Which is why I'm doubling your security detail and keeping you close. He pulled out his phone, showing me the photographs that had been delivered. They were recent, detailed, invasive. They're sending a message. They know where you are, who you are, and they're considering their options. Options like kidnapping me, or worse. He pocketed the phone. I won't let that happen. Whatever else you might think of me, understand this. I protect what's mine. And right now, for better or worse, you're under my protection. I'm not yours. To them, you are. And that's all that matters. He moved toward the door, then paused. Tomorrow you meet my grandmother. Then we start preparing for the actual dinner. And through all of this, you'll have armed security with you at every moment. No arguments, no exceptions. After he left, I sat on the unfamiliar bed in the windowless room and tried to process everything. I'd gotten involved with a crime family's operations by accident, agreed to a fake relationship to secure my freedom, and now I was apparently caught in the crossfire of a territorial dispute with a rival organization. Amanda would absolutely kill me if she knew. My phone rang, Nicholas allowing the daily call. Amanda answered immediately. Finally, I've been worried. Your texts have been weird. Everything's fine. Just busy with the assignment. The lie tasted bitter. How are things there? Boring without you. But I've been doing some research on that Meridian Holdings story you were chasing. Her voice carried concern. Chloe, be careful. Some of the people connected to that company have dangerous associations. I found links to organized crime families, money laundering, the kind of stuff that gets reporters hurt. I'm being careful. I promise. You better be. I need my best friend back in one piece. We chatted for the permitted 5 minutes, and when we hung up, guilt sat heavy in my chest. Amanda was worried about me investigating crime families while I was literally living with one. Nicholas returned later with Maria, who brought dinner and kindly words about the situation being temporary. After they left, I picked at the food and wondered how I'd ended up in a windowless room, protected by guards from a Mafia boss, preparing to lie to his dying grandmother while rival criminals photographed my every movement. 2 weeks ago, my biggest problem had been meeting an article deadline. Now I was trapped in something far more dangerous than I'd ever imagined, and the man holding me captive was starting to feel less like a villain and more like someone just trying to protect the few people he had left to care about, which was possibly the most dangerous realization of all. Meeting his grandmother changed something fundamental. I'd expected judgment, maybe suspicion. Instead, Lucia Verciani looked at me with eyes that had seen 8 decades of life and made her own calculations about what mattered. She held my hand with surprising strength for someone so diminished by disease, studied my face like she was reading a book, written in a language only she understood, and asked questions that had nothing to do with our fabricated love story. "You have lost people," she said after 20 minutes of polite conversation about how Nicholas and I supposedly met. Not a question, a statement. "My parents, 6 years ago. Then you understand what it means to carry grief." She glanced at Nicholas, who stood near the window of her hospital room looking uncomfortable with emotions he couldn't control. "My grandson carries too much. Always trying to protect everyone, never letting anyone protect him. He's dedicated to his family," I offered carefully. "Dedicated." She made a dismissive sound. "Obsessed is the word. Ever since Giovanni and Francesca died. Ever since Carla." Her voice broke slightly. "He thinks if he controls everything, plans everything, no one else will die. But control is an illusion, child. Death comes when it wants." Nicholas turned from the window. "Nonna, you're supposed to be resting, not philosophizing about mortality. I am dying. I can philosophize about whatever I want." But her tone was affectionate. She looked back at me. "You will take care of him when I'm gone?" The weight of that question pressed against my chest. This woman genuinely believed I'd be part of Nicholas's life after she died. She was asking me to carry a responsibility I'd never agreed to, built on lies I was being paid to tell. "I'll do my best," I said, because what else could I say? She seemed satisfied with that non-answer, and drifted into talking about Christmas plans, about family members who'd be attending the dinner, about traditions she wanted honored one final time. Nicholas relaxed slightly as the conversation moved to safer territory. On the drive back, neither of us spoke for the first 10 minutes. Then Nicholas said quietly, "Thank you for not correcting her assumptions." "About what?" "About still being around after she's gone. About any of this being permanent." He kept his eyes on the road. "She needs to believe I won't be alone. You won't be alone. You have Roberto, your whole organization, extended family, people who work for me or owe me something. That's not the same as having someone who chooses to stay." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "My grandmother understands that distinction better than anyone." I didn't know how to respond to that level of honesty, so I changed the subject. "She mentioned your sister, Carla." His jaw clenched. "I told you about her yesterday. You said she died. You didn't say it still destroys you to hear her name. Some wounds don't heal. They just become part of your landscape." He pulled through the mansion gates, nodding to security. She was 21, studying architecture at university. She wanted to design buildings that made cities better, spaces that helped people instead of just housing them. She had no interest in the family business, wanted nothing to do with any of it. What happened? Someone decided the best way to hurt me was through her. He parked but didn't get out immediately. They grabbed her leaving campus, demanded I surrender territory, turn over resources, basically destroy everything my family had built. I was trying to negotiate when... He stopped, breathing carefully. They killed her anyway. Sent her body back as a message that mercy isn't profitable in our world. Nicholas, 5 years ago, I was 27. Thought I understood how dangerous this life was. Thought I'd taken all the right precautions. I was wrong. He finally looked at me. That's why the Albanian situation is making me paranoid. They're following the same playbook. Find someone I care about. Use them as leverage. Force my hand. I won't make the same mistake twice. But you barely know me. I'm not actually someone you care about. No. His gaze held mine. You're living in my house. My grandmother adores you after one meeting. You've seen me vulnerable in ways I don't show anyone. At what point does barely knowing someone become irrelevant to how dangerous losing them would be? Before I could process that statement, Roberto appeared at the car window, expression urgent. Nicholas rolled it down. We need to talk. Now. Inside Nicholas's study, Roberto laid out a series of photographs on the desk. More surveillance shots. Me in the garden 3 days ago. Nicholas and me at the boutique. Even images from inside the mansion taken through windows. They're escalating, Roberto said. These photos were delivered an hour ago with a note. Pretty bird in a cage. Wonder what happens when the cage opens. Arbin's getting impatient. Nicholas examined each image. He wants me rattled. Wants me making mistakes. The dinner is in 5 days. We should postpone. No. Nicholas's tone left no room for argument. Postponing signals weakness. We proceed as planned, but we accelerate security protocols. I want every entrance monitored, every guest vetted twice, armed presence at all access points. And her? Roberto glanced at me. She doesn't leave the interior rooms until the dinner. No exceptions. I'm standing right here, I pointed out. You could address me directly instead of talking around me like I'm furniture. Nicholas's attention snapped to me. You're not furniture. You're a liability I'm trying to protect while managing a territorial dispute with an organization that's killed for less provocation than what we're dealing with. Forgive me if my manners aren't perfect under the circumstances. Your manners are fine. Your habit of making decisions about my life without consulting me is less fine. Would you prefer I consult you before ordering people not to let you get kidnapped or killed? Should we have a committee discussion about optimal security procedures? I'd prefer you remember that I'm a person with agency, not just a problem to be managed. I stopped mid-sentence because my phone was ringing. Amanda's number flashed on the screen. Nicholas held up a hand, a signal to be careful. I answered, putting it on speaker as we'd been doing for every call. Chloe, thank God. Are you okay? I'm fine. What's wrong? Someone came by the Tribune asking about you today. Wanted to know what story you were working on, where you'd gone, when you'd be back. The receptionist gave the standard no comment about employee assignments response, but the guy was persistent. Really persistent. My stomach dropped. What did he look like? Dark hair, accent she couldn't place, expensive suit. He left a card with just a phone number on it and said if you wanted to discuss mutual interests, you should call. Nicholas and Roberto exchanged looks. Albanian operatives fishing for information. Amanda, listen carefully. Don't engage with anyone asking about me. If someone approaches you again, tell building security immediately. Chloe, what the hell is going on? This story you're supposedly covering, it's not adding up. You've been gone almost 2 weeks with barely any contact. Now mysterious men are showing up asking questions. I can't explain right now. Just trust me that I'm safe. I'm handling something complicated, and I need you to be careful until I'm back. That's not reassuring. I know. But it's all I can give you right now. I hated the fear in her voice, hated that my choices were putting her at risk. Please, Amanda, just be cautious. After we hung up, the silence in the study was oppressive. They're mapping your connections, Roberto said. Standard intimidation tactics. They want you to know they can reach your friends if they want to. Amanda has nothing to do with any of this, I said, anger rising. She's a journalist, a civilian. You don't bring civilians into your wars. We didn't bring her in. Arbin did. Nicholas was already pulling out his phone. But we're going to protect her anyway. Roberto, put a discreet security detail on Amanda Wells. Make sure she doesn't notice, but make sure no one gets close to her without us knowing about it. You're going to have me followed? I demanded. I'm going to have your best friend protected from people who might use her to hurt you, which would hurt me, which is the entire point of their strategy. Nicholas moved closer. This is how it works, Chloe. In my world, everyone connected to a target becomes a target themselves. I'm sorry that reality is uncomfortable, but it's reality nonetheless. So now Amanda is trapped in this because I witnessed your illegal business deal. Now Amanda is protected because you matter to me more than either of us planned for. He said it simply, like stating a fact rather than admitting something significant. The study door opened without warning. Maria stood there, which was unusual. She always knocked. Her expression was stricken. Mr. Nicholas. The hospital called. Your grandmother. She couldn't finish the sentence. Nicholas went absolutely still. Is she? She had a cardiac episode. They stabilized her, but the doctor says it's time. He's suggesting you come now if you want to, if there are things to be said. He was moving before Maria finished speaking, grabbing his jacket, keys. Then he stopped and looked back at me. Come with me. Nicholas, I shouldn't. This is private. Family. You're supposed to be my girlfriend. She asked to see you again. Please. The last word cost him something to say. We made the drive in half the time it should have taken, Nicholas white-knuckling the steering wheel while Roberto navigated from the passenger seat. I sat in back, uselessly trying to think of something comforting to say and coming up empty. Lucia was awake when we arrived, but visibly weaker. Tubes and monitors surrounded her bed, and her breathing had a labored quality that made my chest ache in sympathy. Nico, she said softly when she saw him. Always rushing. I'm not leaving quite yet. The doctor says many things. I say I have enough left in me to make sure you're properly settled. Her gaze found mine. Come here, girl. I approached the bed. She took my hand again. That same surprising grip. Promise me something, she said. When I'm gone, don't let him disappear into the business. Don't let him forget how to be human. Make him go to church sometimes. Make him eat real food instead of whatever Roberto throws at him between meetings. Make him remember that life is more than power and revenge. Nonna? Chloe doesn't need to promise. She does. Because you won't keep those promises to yourself. Lucia squeezed my hand. You'll take care of him? The lie stuck in my throat. This woman was dying, asking me to care for her grandson after she was gone, believing in a future that would never exist. But looking into her eyes, seeing the desperate hope there, I couldn't bring myself to shatter that illusion. I'll take care of him, I whispered. Good. She relaxed slightly. Now let me talk to my grandson alone. I stepped outside the room, giving them privacy. Through the small window in the door, I watched Nicholas sit beside her bed, head bowed close to hers, her hand clasping his. Whatever she was saying made his shoulders shake, and I realized with a start that he was crying. This powerful man who commanded a criminal organization, who ordered people's fates with a word, who'd kidnapped me to serve his purposes. He was crying beside his dying grandmother, and something in my chest cracked watching it. Roberto appeared beside me. She's the only person he's ever let see him break. She's his family. Of course he'd break. You don't understand how rare that is in our world. Showing weakness even to family can get you killed. But with her, he's always just been Nico. Not the boss, not the heir, just her grandson. Roberto's expression softened. He's going to be unbearable after she's gone. All that grief with nowhere to put it except into work and violence. Then maybe someone should make sure he has somewhere else to put it. Maybe someone should. Roberto looked at me meaningfully. If that someone is planning to stick around long term. Before I could respond to that loaded statement, Nicholas emerged from the room. His eyes were red, but his expression was composed again. She wants to rest. The doctor says it could be tonight, could be a few more days. Her heart is failing, but she's stubborn. He rubbed his face. We're moving the dinner up, day after tomorrow. If she's still here, we'll bring everyone to her after. If she's not, his voice caught. If she's not, at least I kept my promise to give her one last Christmas. We drove back in silence. When we arrived at the mansion, Nicholas disappeared into his study without a word. Maria whispered that this was normal, that he needed space to process, that I shouldn't take it personally. But hours passed, and when I finally worked up the courage to check on him, I found him sitting in the dark, a bottle of whiskey mostly empty on the desk, staring at nothing. You should eat something, I said from the doorway. Not hungry. Nicholas. She made me promise to be happy. He laughed bitterly. Can you imagine? Her dying wish is that I stop focusing solely on business and revenge and actually build a life worth living. She has no idea what she's asking. I moved into the room, closing the door behind me. Maybe she knows exactly what she's asking. Maybe she understands that you're destroying yourself and she wants better for you. There is no better in my world. There's survival and there's death. She's romanticizing something that doesn't exist. Or you've forgotten it can exist because you've spent 5 years punishing yourself for your sister's death. The words came out harsher than I intended. You can't protect everyone, Nicholas. You can't control everything. And drinking yourself unconscious the night before you're supposed to finalize security for a massive event probably isn't the strategic genius move you think it is. He looked up at me, expression unreadable. Why do you care? You're being paid to pretend to care. You don't actually have to. Maybe I'm a better actress than you gave me credit for. I grabbed the whiskey bottle from his desk. Or maybe watching you self-destruct is harder than I expected. Either way, you're going to eat something, drink water, and get some sleep. Tomorrow we have a dinner to finalize, and a grandmother to not disappoint. She's dying. I'm going to disappoint her by definition. As she's dying thinking you found someone who makes you want to be more than just the boss, don't disappoint her by proving that was a fantasy. I pulled him to his feet, surprised when he didn't resist. Come on. I led him to the kitchen, made him sit at the island while I rummaged through the refrigerator for something easy. Ended up heating leftover pasta Maria had prepared earlier. The entire time, he watched me with an intensity that made me hyper-aware of every movement. You know you don't have to do this, he said as I set the plate in front of him. Do what? Take care of me. That's not part of our arrangement. Consider it an investment in my own survival. If you're too drunk or sleep-deprived to make good decisions, the Albanian Mafia might actually succeed in kidnapping me. Purely selfish motives. I poured him water. Eat. He did, mechanically at first, then with more focus as actual hunger kicked in. When he finished, I pushed the water glass closer. All of it. Then bed. You're very bossy for someone who's technically my prisoner. I prefer to think of myself as an unwilling consultant on your terrible life choices. I leaned against the counter. Besides, your grandmother asked me to take care of you. I keep my promises, even the ones I'm forced into. Something shifted in his expression. You really meant that. When you promised her. I meant it in the moment. Whether it's possible long-term is a different question. He stood, closing the distance between us. We'd been in close proximity before, during the shopping trip, practicing couple behavior, the night I'd bandaged his shoulder. But this felt different, more raw, like all the pretense had been stripped away, and we were just two people who'd somehow ended up mattering to each other, despite all the reasons we shouldn't. What if I asked you to stay? He said quietly. Not because of the arrangement. Not because of my grandmother. Just because He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Just because you've become something I didn't plan for and don't know how to categorize. My breath caught. You're grieving. You're exhausted. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. His hand came up, hovering near my face without touching. You're not what I expected, Chloe. You were supposed to be a convenient solution to a temporary problem. Instead, you're... The moment shattered when his phone rang. He answered, listened, and every bit of softness disappeared from his expression. When? Pause. Both warehouses? Simultaneously? Another pause. Get everyone to the compound. Lock it down. I'm on my way. He ended the call and looked at me with something like regret. The Albanians just hit 2 of our major storage facilities. This isn't posturing anymore. It's war. What does that mean for the dinner? It means we're doing it tomorrow whether we're ready or not. It means the next 24 hours are going to be chaos. And it means... He stopped at the kitchen door, turning back. It means you stay in the interior rooms no matter what you hear or see. Promise me. Nicholas. Promise me, Chloe. I promise. He left, and I stood alone in the kitchen, heart pounding, wondering how a fake relationship with a criminal had somehow become the most real thing in my life, and wondering what would happen when reality came crashing down around us. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in chaos barely contained. The mansion had transformed overnight. Decorations appeared as if by magic. Garlands wound through banisters, candles clustered on every surface, a massive tree in the entrance hall dripping with ornaments that looked antique and expensive. Tables were being arranged in the grand dining room by staff I'd never seen before, all moving with precision under Maria's watchful direction. I stayed in my interior room as instructed, watching the preparations through security monitors Nicholas had installed, so I wouldn't feel completely isolated. Armed guards positioned at every entrance, metal detectors disguised as decorative archways. Nothing about this looked like a family celebration. It looked like a fortress preparing for siege. Amanda had texted early that morning, a quick message saying someone had been following her but lost them near her apartment. The security detail Nicholas assigned was working, but knowing she was being watched because of me made guilt settle like concrete in my stomach. Maria arrived at noon with the dress Nicholas had selected, the emerald silk that had made his breath catch in the boutique. She helped me into it, arranged my hair in loose waves, applied makeup with an expert hand that made my features look sharper, more defined. "You look like you belong here," she said, stepping back to assess her work. "I don't, though. Belonging is a choice, not a birthright." She fastened a delicate gold necklace around my throat. Mr. Nicholas's grandmother believed that. She was an immigrant who built a life in a country that didn't want her. She chose to belong, and eventually everyone agreed. That's different. She had strength I don't have. "You have been living in this house for 2 weeks, surrounded by armed criminals, threatened by rival organizations, forced to lie to a dying woman, and you haven't broken." Maria's eyes met mine in the mirror. "You have more strength than you credit yourself for." Nicholas came to get me at 4. He wore a black suit, tailored so precisely, it looked like it had been grown on his body rather than sewn. White shirt, black tie, gold cufflinks catching light. The chain was gone, too casual for tonight's formality. He looked every inch the powerful boss everyone believed him to be. "You're stunning," he said, and for once there was no calculation in the compliment, just honest appreciation. "You clean up acceptably," I replied, trying to keep things light, despite the tension radiating off him. Roberto confirmed all guests. Everyone's been vetted twice. Security is as tight as we can make it without turning this into an obvious military operation. He offered his arm. "Ready to perform?" "As ready as I'll ever be." The first guests were already arriving as we descended the main staircase. I recognized some faces from the files I'd memorized. His Aunt Rosaria with her husband, his Uncle Giuseppe, and 3 cousins whose names I frantically recalled. They greeted Nicholas with embraces and rapid Italian, then turned curious eyes on me. "Everyone, this is Chloe," Nicholas said, his hand settling possessively at my waist. "Chloe, my family." Rosaria pulled me into a hug before I could react. Finally, a woman who can handle my nephew. We were starting to think he'd die alone with his account books. "I'm still here, Zia," Nicholas said dryly. "And thank God for it." She switched to English with barely a trace of accent. "You're the journalist, yes? The one who argued with him about terrible art?" "That's me. Though in my defense, the sculpture really was awful." She laughed, and some of the tension in my shoulders eased. Maybe this wouldn't be complete disaster. More guests filtered in over the next hour. Business associates whose smiles didn't reach their eyes. Allied family representatives assessing me like I was a stock they were considering investing in. A few politicians I recognized from the news, here despite the obvious risk to their reputations. Everyone played their parts beautifully. This was a Christmas celebration. Nothing more. Nothing threatening. But I saw the security team positioned throughout the house. Saw the way certain guests got additional screening. Saw Nicholas tracking every movement with hypervigilant attention, even as he played the gracious host. Roberto appeared beside me during a lull in introductions. "You're doing well. Keep it up. I feel like I'm defusing a bomb while wearing heels." Accurate metaphor. He scanned the room constantly. "We had a situation at the East Gate 20 minutes ago. False alarm, but everyone's on edge." Define false alarm. Someone tried to approach claiming they were invited. They weren't on the list. We turned them away. Probably nothing. But given the Albanian situation, we're not assuming anything is innocent. Nicholas rejoined us before I could respond, his hand finding the small of my back with practiced ease. Problem? Just briefing her on the gate situation, Roberto said, which she didn't need to know about because it's handled. Nicholas's tone carried a warning. To me, he said, "There's someone I want you to meet." He led me toward an older man standing near the fireplace, white hair combed back, expensive suit, eyes that missed nothing. Power radiated off him in waves almost as strong as Nicholas's. "Don Salvatore," Nicholas said respectfully. "May I introduce Chloe Turner?" The man's handshake was firm, assessing. "So this is the woman who's tamed Chicago's youngest boss. You have my congratulations and my condolences." "Mostly condolences," I replied, earning a surprised laugh. "She's sharp. I like her." Don Salvatore studied me openly. "You know what you've gotten yourself into, girl." "I'm starting to understand the scope of my mistake, yes." "Good. Honesty is rare in this world." He turned to Nicholas. "Your grandmother must be pleased." "She is. Unfortunately, she's not strong enough to attend tonight. We'll visit her at the hospital afterward with immediate family. Give her my regards. Lucia Verciani is one of the finest women I've had the privilege to know." The Don's expression softened. "She deserves to see her grandson happy before she goes." After he moved away, I whispered, "Who is he really?" "Head of the Salvatore family. Controls most of the East Coast operations. If he disapproves of something, it doesn't happen. His approval tonight means you've passed a test you didn't know you were taking." "Wonderful. More pressure." Dinner was announced, and the crowd migrated to the dining room. The table was spectacular. Crystal, china, centerpieces that probably cost more than my car. Place cards arranged everyone with strategic precision. I was seated beside Nicholas at the head, with Don Salvatore to my other side and Rosaria across from me. The meal progressed in waves: antipasti, pasta, fish, meat, each course more elaborate than the last. Wine flowed freely. Conversation rose and fell in multiple languages. I fielded questions about my work, my family, how I dealt with Nicholas's demanding schedule. I lied smoothly, the story we'd crafted becoming easier to tell with each repetition. But under the surface, tension hummed. Nicholas barely touched his food, his attention constantly scanning the room. Roberto stood near the door, earpiece visible now, no longer pretending this was just a party. Other security personnel had positioned themselves at every exit. Midway through the main course, my phone buzzed in the small clutch I'd brought. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. I glanced at Nicholas, who gave a subtle nod. I excused myself, moving to an anteroom off the dining area. "Amanda, everything okay?" "Define okay." Her voice was strained. "The guy following me is gone, but there's someone watching my building. Black car, tinted windows, been there for hours. Chloe, what the hell is going on? And don't tell me you're covering a story out of state because I'm not an idiot. I can't explain right now, but the security watching you, they're there to protect you, not hurt you." "Security? Chloe, are you in danger?" Before I could answer, I heard raised voices from the entrance hall, not shouting, but urgent. Nicholas appeared in the doorway of the anteroom, expression hard. "We need to end this call, now. Amanda, I have to go. Stay inside your apartment. Don't open the door for anyone except police with visible badges. I'll call you when I can." "Chloe," I hung up, guilt and fear warring in my chest. "What's happening?" "Carlo's here. My cousin. The one we identified as the traitor working with the Albanians." Nicholas's jaw was tight. "He's demanding entry, claiming he has a right to attend family Christmas. Do you let him in? If I don't, he'll make a scene that draws attention we can't afford. If I do, we have a confirmed Albanian informant inside the house during our most vulnerable gathering." He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "Roberto's running interference, but I need to handle this personally. Come with me." We returned to the dining room. Nicholas stood, raising his wineglass. "My apologies for the interruption. There's a small matter at the entrance that requires my attention. Please, continue enjoying your meal. I'll return momentarily." The murmur of conversation resumed as we exited. In the entrance hall, Carlo stood flanked by two of Roberto's security team. He was younger than I expected, maybe 25, with Nicholas's dark coloring but without the same presence. When he saw us, His expression twisted into something ugly. Finally, the great Nicholas Verciani graces me with his attention. Carlo's words slurred slightly. He'd been drinking. Too busy with your new toy to remember family? You're not invited, Carlo. You know why? Because you think I'm a traitor? You have no proof. I have surveillance footage of you meeting with Albanian operatives 3 times in the past 2 weeks. I have financial records showing payments from shell companies tied to Arben's organization. I have testimony from 2 of my men who witnessed you passing information about our security protocols. Nicholas's voice was deadly calm. So yes, I think you're a traitor. I know you're a traitor. Carlo lunged forward, held back by security. You never gave me a chance. Always the golden grandson. Always the one Nonna loved most. Always the heir. I'm family too, Nicholas. You sold out your family for money and resentment. That makes you less than nothing. Nicholas moved closer, voice dropping. You have one chance to walk away from this alive. Tell me what Arben is planning. Tell me what tonight's real target is. Do that, and I'll let you disappear instead of ending this the traditional way. Go to hell. Wrong answer. Nicholas nodded to Roberto, who moved with frightening speed. Carlo was on the ground before I fully processed what happened, zip ties binding his wrists. Take him to the lower storage room, Nicholas ordered. We'll deal with this after the guests leave. As they dragged Carlo away, he screamed threats and obscenities in Italian. Some of it I understood. Curses against Nicholas, against his grandmother, against me. The word puttana came through clearly. Whore. Nicholas went absolutely still. Then, deliberately, he walked over to where Roberto had pinned Carlo and crouched down to eye level. You can insult me all you want. That's your right as a soon-to-be dead man, but you will not disrespect her. Understood? Carlo spat in his direction. Nicholas didn't flinch, just stood and nodded to Roberto. Make sure he's secured, and check every guest. I want to know if anyone else here is compromised. We returned to the dining room. I was shaking slightly, adrenaline flooding my system. Nicholas took my hand under the table, squeezed once, then released. A silent reassurance. Everything resolved? Don Salvatore asked quietly. A minor family disagreement, nothing that concerns our guests. Nicholas's smile was perfectly crafted. Now, where were we? The meal continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations were more subdued. People started checking watches, making excuses about early mornings. By the time dessert was served, it was clear the party was winding down earlier than planned. Roberto appeared and whispered something to Nicholas, who went pale. He stood immediately. My apologies, but I've just received word from the hospital. My grandmother has taken a turn. Immediate family will be heading there now. For everyone else, please continue to enjoy the evening. Maria and the staff will see to your needs. The Don stood as well. Give her my best. We'll take our leave and let you tend to family matters. Within 20 minutes, the house had mostly cleared. Nicholas, Rosaria, Giuseppe, and 3 cousins gathered in the entrance hall. Nicholas looked at me. You should come. She asked for you specifically. I don't want to intrude on family. You promised her you'd take care of me. His voice was raw. She'll want to see that you meant it. The drive to the hospital was silent, except for quiet sobbing from Rosaria. When we arrived, a doctor met us with the expression medical professionals get when delivering bad news. She's stable for now, but her heart is failing rapidly. She's asking for Nicholas. She's been asking for the past hour. We crowded into her room, and I hung back near the door, not wanting to take space from actual family. But Lucia's eyes found me immediately. There she is. Come here, child. I moved to the bedside. She took my hand with surprising strength. You came. Good. She looked at Nicholas. All of you out. I need to speak with Chloe alone. Nonna. Out. I don't have time to argue. Her tone allowed no debate. One by one, they filed out. Nicholas last. He gave me a look I couldn't quite read, then closed the door behind him. Lucia studied me with those sharp eyes. You think I don't know. My heart stopped. Know what? That this started as something false. That my grandson forced your hand somehow. Made you play this role. She smiled slightly. I've lived 83 years in a world built on lies and necessities. You think I can't recognize when something begins as strategy? I'm sorry. I didn't want to deceive you. But something changed. She squeezed my hand. What started false became real, didn't it? I see how you look at him when you think no one notices. I see how he's different with you. Softer, more human. That cannot be faked, no matter how good the actress. Tears burned behind my eyes. I don't know what it is. I just know it's complicated. Love is always complicated. It wouldn't be worth having otherwise. She shifted painfully. I'm going to ask you something, and I need the truth. Do you care for my grandson? Not the performance, not the arrangement. Really care? I thought about lying, about maintaining the fiction to the end. But those sharp eyes deserved honesty. Yes. God help me. Yes. Then promise me again. Promise you'll fight for him. Even when he makes it difficult. Even when his world seems too dark to navigate. Promise you'll be the light that reminds him life is worth living beyond revenge and responsibility. Mrs. Versiani, promise me, Chloe. I promise. She relaxed, sinking back into pillows. Good. Now send my grandson in. I need to release him from some promises so he can keep new ones. I called Nicholas back in. He went to her bedside immediately, taking the hand I'd just released. I started to leave, but she shook her head. Stay. You should hear this too. She looked at Nicholas. You've been a good grandson, better than I deserved. You've carried burdens no one should bear alone, and you've done it with honor and strength that would make your father proud. Nonna, please. Let me finish. I don't have much time, and I need you to hear this. She took a labored breath. I'm releasing you from your promise to me. The one you made after Carla died, when you swore you'd dedicate yourself to protecting the family above all else, that you'd never let personal attachments make you vulnerable again. Nicholas's face went white. That promise is why I've kept everyone safe. That promise is why you've been half alive for 5 years. It's time, Nico. Time to let yourself actually live, not just survive. She glanced at me, then back to him. You found someone worth breaking old promises for. Don't waste that gift because you're afraid of loss. I can't lose anyone else. I won't survive it. You will. Because that's what we do. We survive, we grieve, we keep living. Her voice was fading. Love her, Nico. Let her love you. Build something beautiful instead of just defending something broken. Her eyes closed, and for a heart-stopping moment I thought she was gone. But her chest still rose and fell, shallow but steady. Nicholas leaned down, pressed a kiss to her forehead, whispered something in Italian I didn't catch. We stayed another hour. Family filtered in and out, saying goodbyes that felt final. Lucia slept through most of it, occasionally waking to smile at whoever was there, then drifting off again. When we finally left, dawn was breaking. Christmas morning. Nicholas was silent the entire drive back. Grief and exhaustion carved into every line of his face. At the mansion, most of the security team had gone to rest in shifts. Roberto met us at the door. Carlo talked. The Albanians were planning to hit the dinner, but when they saw our security setup, they aborted. He claims they're regrouping, planning something bigger. Roberto looked exhausted. What do you want to do with him? Keep him secured for now. I'll decide after. Nicholas's voice broke. After. He climbed the stairs slowly, and I followed. At his bedroom door, he stopped. Thank you for being there tonight. For her. For me. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. None of this was fair to you. But you handled it with grace I didn't deserve. He turned fully to face me. What my grandmother said. About things becoming real. Did she ask you about that? She might have mentioned it. And what did you tell her? I met his eyes. Those dark eyes that had terrified me 2 weeks ago, and now just looked heartbroken and exhausted. I told her the truth. That it's complicated, but it's real. He moved faster than I expected, closing the distance between us, his hands framing my face. Say that again. It's real, Nicholas. Whatever this is, it's real. He kissed me then, and it wasn't strategic or performed or calculated. It was desperate and honest and tasted like grief and relief mixed together. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer. When we broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I don't know how to do this, how to let someone in when everything in my experience says caring about people gets them killed. We'll figure it out. After your grandmother, after everything settles, we'll figure out what this is and how it works. And if it doesn't work, if my world destroys you the way it destroys everything good, then at least we tried. At least you kept your promise to her to actually live, instead of just surviving. He pulled me close, holding me like I was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. We stood there in the hallway as morning light crept through windows, two people who'd started as captor and captive, and somehow become something neither of us had planned for. Something worth fighting for, even if we had no idea how to win. Lucia Verziani died 3 days after Christmas, in the early hours of a gray morning when Chicago was blanketed with fresh snow. Nicholas had been at the hospital when it happened. I got the call from Roberto at 6 a.m., his voice careful and controlled, telling me what I already knew from the hollow sound in the background. I dressed quickly, found Maria waiting downstairs with the car already running. The hospital room was crowded with family when I arrived. Rosaria sobbed against her husband's shoulder. Giuseppe stood by the window, jaw tight. The cousins clustered together, speaking in low Italian. And Nicholas sat beside the bed holding his grandmother's hand, completely still, staring at nothing. I approached slowly, uncertain of my place in this grief. Roberto appeared at my elbow. He hasn't moved since she went. Won't let go of her hand. His voice was rough. You should try. He might listen to you. I moved to Nicholas's side, placed my hand gently on his shoulder. He didn't react, didn't acknowledge my presence. Nicholas, I said quietly, you need to let them prepare her. Nothing. She's gone. Holding on won't bring her back. His fingers tightened around Lucia's, and for a moment I thought he'd stay frozen there forever. Then slowly, he released her hand and stood. He looked at me, and the devastation in his eyes made my chest ache. She was the last one who knew me before all of this. Before I became... His voice broke. She's gone. And now there's no one left who remembers when I was just Nico. That's not true. I took his hand, lacing our fingers together. You're still Nico. You've just forgotten how to be him. He pulled me close, buried his face against my shoulder, and shook with silent grief. I held him while his family looked away, granting privacy to a moment too raw for witnesses. The funeral arrangements consumed the next 2 days. Traditional Italian Catholic service, burial in the family plot beside his grandfather. Nicholas moved through it all mechanically, making decisions with Roberto's help, accepting condolences with practiced grace that hid the hollowness underneath. I stayed close, doing what I could, fielding phone calls, coordinating with the church, making sure Nicholas actually ate something between meetings with the funeral director and the priest. Amanda called twice, concerned because I'd extended my out-of-state assignment indefinitely. I promised to explain everything soon, hating the lie but unable to navigate truth while Nicholas's world was collapsing. The funeral was massive. Hundreds of people filled the church, family, business associates, politicians, community members whose lives Lucia had touched in 8 decades of fierce living. Don Salvatore delivered a eulogy in Italian that had half the congregation in tears. Rosaria spoke about her mother's strength, her unwavering belief in family, her ability to love unconditionally even in a world that demanded conditions for everything. Nicholas didn't speak. He sat in the front pew, expressionless, while person after person shared memories of the woman who'd raised him. I sat beside him, our hands clasped together, wondering if he even registered my presence through the grief. At the burial, snow fell in soft flakes that caught in his dark hair. He stood at the graveside until everyone else had left, until even the cemetery workers had discreetly withdrawn to give him space. I waited nearby, close enough to reach if he needed me, but far enough to let him grieve privately. Finally, he spoke without turning around. She told me to let you love me. Said it was her dying wish. I know. I was there. Do you? He turned to face me. Love me, I mean. Or is that part of the performance we haven't dropped yet? I don't know what I feel anymore, Nicholas. Everything's tangled together. The fear and the lies and the real moments and the fake ones. But whatever it is, It's not pretending. I moved closer. I care about you. Probably more than is wise given the circumstances. Circumstances like the fact that you're still technically being held against your will, that you witnessed crimes that make you a permanent liability, that my enemies have targeted you because of proximity to me. All of those things, yes. He laughed bitterly. You should run. Take the money, disappear, build a life somewhere I can't touch. That's what anyone rational would do. Probably. But rationality left the building when I started bandaging your wounds and lying to your dying grandmother. I closed the distance between us. I'm here because I choose to be, not because of threats or money or obligation, because somewhere in the middle of this disaster, you became someone I don't want to walk away from. He kissed me then, desperate and needing, and I kissed him back with equal intensity. We stood in the cemetery surrounded by graves and falling snow, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible way and somehow made it mean something. When we finally returned to the mansion, family had gathered there for the traditional post-funeral meal. The dining room filled with relatives sharing stories, crying, laughing at memories. Nicholas moved through it in a daze, accepting embraces and condolences, but not really present. I helped Maria in the kitchen, grateful for something concrete to do. Amanda had been trying to reach me, but I'd silenced my phone. I'd have to deal with that reality soon. Explain why I'd been gone nearly 3 weeks, why I'd lied, what I'd gotten myself tangled in. But not tonight. Tonight was for Nicholas and his grief, and the family trying to hold together in Lucia's absence. Evening came. Family started departing, offering final hugs and promises to check in soon. Rosaria pulled me aside before leaving. "You're good for him," she said. "My mother saw it before anyone else did. She always could see what people needed before they knew themselves. I don't know what I am for him. Everything's complicated. Love is always complicated in this family." She squeezed my hand. "But Lucia believed in you. That's recommendation enough for me." After everyone left, the mansion felt cavernous and empty. Nicholas disappeared into his study with a bottle of whiskey. Roberto caught me in the hallway. "Let him be for a while. He needs to process alone before he can let anyone help. He shouldn't be alone right now. Sometimes alone is necessary. Trust me. I've known him since he was 16. I understand how he grieves." Roberto's expression softened. "But stay close. When he's ready to not be alone anymore, you should be there." I went to my room, the interior one I'd been confined to for security, though those restrictions felt less important now. Changed out of funeral clothes into comfortable sweats. Tried to read but couldn't focus. Amanda texted again, more insistent now, and I finally responded with a vague promise to call tomorrow and explain everything. Around midnight, someone knocked on my door. Nicholas stood there, still in his funeral suit minus the jacket and tie, looking wrecked and exhausted and desperately alone. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, and he entered the room he'd probably been in dozens of times for security purposes, but never like this. Never vulnerable and seeking comfort rather than asserting control. He sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. "I can't be in that study. Can't be around her things in the library. Can't sleep in my room because I can see the guest room where we put her when she visited last month." His voice was raw. "I don't know where to be that doesn't remind me she's gone." I sat beside him, close enough that our shoulders touched. "Then be here. With me. Tonight you don't have to be the boss or the grieving grandson or anything except a person who lost someone important." He turned to look at me, and something in his expression cracked open. "I don't know how to do this without her. She was my compass, the thing that kept me from becoming just another monster in expensive suits. What if without her that's all I am? You're more than that. You've always been more than that." I took his hand. "She raised you to be strong and honorable and protective. Those things don't disappear because she's gone. You don't understand what this world does to people. How it grinds away everything good until all that's left is survival and violence. Then don't let it. Fight for the parts of yourself she believed in. Be the man she saw when she looked at you, not the man your enemies fear." He pulled me close, and we lay back on the bed fully clothed, wrapped around each other like anchors in a storm, his face pressed against my neck, my fingers threading through his hair. No words, just breathing together in the dark. Somewhere in the quiet, he whispered, "I love you. I don't know when it happened or how, but I do. And it terrifies me because everyone I love ends up dead. I'm not going anywhere," I promised, knowing it might be a lie but needing to say it anyway. "You're stuck with me, Nicholas Versiani. That's a terrible decision on your part. Probably. But it's mine to make." We stayed like that until sleep finally claimed us both. Grief and comfort tangled together into something that felt like hope, despite all the reasons it shouldn't. Morning came too early. Nicholas was gone when I woke, but a note on the pillow said he'd gone to handle business matters that couldn't wait. Roberto appeared an hour later to brief me on security updates. The Albanian situation had quieted during the funeral out of traditional respect, but intelligence suggested they were planning something larger. "Nicholas wants you to stay in the interior areas for now," Roberto said, "until we know what Arbin's planning. I can't hide forever. No. But you can stay safe until Nicholas is in a better position to handle threats. Right now he's operating on grief and rage. Not ideal for strategic thinking." I understood what Roberto wasn't saying. Nicholas was dangerous to himself and others when emotionally compromised. Keeping me safe was one less thing for him to worry about. Amanda called mid-morning, and I finally answered. "Chloe, what the hell is going on? You've been gone 3 weeks, you're lying about where you are, and now there's some security guy watching my building like he thinks I'm in danger." "I know. I'm sorry. I'll explain everything, I promise. But are you safe? Has anyone else approached you? Besides the obvious bodyguard?" "No. But Chloe, you're scaring me. This isn't like you. I know, and I'm going to make it right. Just give me a few more days to sort things out. Then I'll tell you everything." I hesitated. "Do you trust me?" "Yes. But that doesn't mean I'm not terrified for you. I understand. I'm terrified for me too sometimes. I tried for lightness and failed. But I'm okay. I promise I'm okay." After we hung up, guilt settled like stones in my stomach. I dragged Amanda into this mess, put her at risk, lied to my best friend for weeks. Eventually, there would be a reckoning for all of it. Nicholas returned late afternoon, looking marginally more composed. He found me in the library attempting to work on article drafts I'd been neglecting. "We need to talk," he said, and my stomach dropped at his tone. "About what?" "About this. Us. What happens next?" He sat across from me, expression carefully neutral. "My grandmother is gone. The arrangement we made was contingent on convincing her we were together. That's no longer necessary. You're saying I'm free to go. I'm saying you have a choice. The original contract is fulfilled. I'll transfer the full $50,000 to whatever account you specify, provide protection until the Albanian situation is resolved, and help you rebuild your life outside of all this." He paused. "Or you can stay." Knowing exactly what that means. The danger, the lifestyle, the fact that you'll be part of my world with all its complications. Those are very different options. Yes, which is why I need you to choose freely, without obligation or coercion. I won't hold you here anymore, Chloe. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. I looked at this man who'd kidnapped me, threatened me, forced me into an elaborate lie, and somehow become someone I couldn't imagine leaving. "What do you want me to choose?" "I want you to stay. I want to figure out how to make this work. I want what I told you last night to matter beyond just grief talking." He leaned forward. "But I won't ask you to choose my world over your safety and freedom. That's not a fair choice to demand. Nothing about this has been fair from the beginning. No, but it can be fair going forward, if you want there to be a going forward." Before I could answer, Roberto burst into the library without knocking, expression urgent. "We have a problem. Big one." Nicholas stood immediately. "What happened?" "The mansion's being watched. 3 vehicles positioned at different points around the perimeter. Albanian plates traced to shell companies Arbin controls." Roberto's jaw was tight. "They're planning something. Soon. Increase patrols, lock down all access points, and get everyone not essential off the property." Nicholas moved into command mode instantly, grief shoved aside for crisis management. "How many men do we have on site?" 20, plus another 10 we can pull from nearby locations within 15 minutes. "Do it. And move Chloe to the most secure." He stopped, looked at me. "Unless you want to leave."
I can have you escorted to a safe location away from all this right now. It was the choice he just offered me, crystallized in immediate crisis. Stay in his dangerous world or escape while I still could. I thought about Amanda, about my apartment, about the life I'd had 3 weeks ago that was simple and safe and lonely. Then I looked at Nicholas, at the man who'd shown me vulnerability and strength in equal measure, who'd trusted me with his dying grandmother and his deepest grief. I'm staying, I said. At least until this is resolved. You don't face this alone. Relief flashed across his face before he masked it. Then we move you to the secure room. Now. The rest of the day passed in controlled chaos. Security protocols activated, weapons distributed, defensive positions established. The mansion transformed into a fortress preparing for siege. I stayed in the interior room as instructed, monitoring everything through security feeds Roberto had set up. Nicholas came by periodically to check on me, stealing moments between strategy sessions with his men. During one visit, he pulled me close and kissed me like he was memorizing the feel of it. If something happens, he said against my lips, if this goes badly, Roberto has instructions to get you out. You'll be protected regardless of what happens to me. Nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that. Then we'll make sure it doesn't. I gripped his shirt. You promised your grandmother you'd actually live. You don't get to break that promise by getting yourself killed the week after her funeral. He almost smiled. Bossy even when I'm trying to be noble. Someone has to keep you from your worst instincts. He kissed me again, then left to continue preparations. I watched through monitors as night fell, and the mansion settled into tense waiting. Guards at every access point, lights strategically positioned. Everything ready for whatever came next. Around midnight, Roberto's voice crackled through the intercom. Movement at the south gate, multiple vehicles approaching. I watched the feeds as 3 black SUVs pulled up to the property line. Men emerged, and even through the grainy footage I could see weapons. Not a subtle approach, a direct assault. Nicholas's voice came through the security channel, calm and commanding. Hold positions. Let them make the first move. Record everything. The Albanian forces spread out, clearly planning coordinated entry from multiple points. This wasn't intimidation or posturing. This was war. And I was trapped in the middle of it, watching the man I'd somehow fallen for prepare to defend his home and his life against enemies I'd inadvertently helped create by existing in his world. The choice to stay suddenly felt very real and very dangerous, but I'd meant what I said. I wasn't leaving. Not tonight. Not until this was over and we could figure out what we actually were to each other, without death and lies tangling everything. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. The attack on the mansion lasted 17 minutes. I know because I watched every second tick by on the security monitor while men with guns turned Nicholas's home into a war zone. The interior room held. The door didn't break, but watching him move through crossfire on those grainy feeds made my chest feel like someone was sitting on it. When the gunfire finally stopped, Roberto's voice came through the radio Nicholas had left me. Clear. We held them off. Boss wants to know you're... Static swallowed the rest. I tried responding. Got nothing back. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The door opened 10 minutes later. Not Nicholas. 2 men I'd seen around the property but never spoken to directly. Come with us, the taller one said. Not threatening. Just matter of fact. Where's Nicholas? Dealing with casualties. He sent us to move you to a more secure location while we assess damage. Something in my gut twisted. I want to talk to him first. He's busy. We need to move now. The shorter one stepped closer, hand extended like he might physically guide me. I backed up instinctively. I'm not going anywhere until I hear his voice confirming this. The tall one sighed, pulled out a phone, tapped something, held it to his ear. She's refusing. Pause. Understood. He lowered the phone. Didn't offer it to me. Boss says stop being difficult and trust the process. That phrasing felt wrong. Nicholas wouldn't say it like that. He'd be blunt, probably irritated, but he'd use my name. Let me hear him say it. We don't have time for... I grabbed the door handle, slammed it shut, and threw the lock. Reinforced or not, it would buy me seconds. Shouting erupted outside. Fists pounded the wood. I fumbled for the radio, switched channels blindly. hoping someone legitimate was monitoring. "This is Chloe." 2 men claiming Roberto sent them. "I don't think they're ours," Static answered. Then Roberto's voice, sharp and urgent. "Where are you?" "Interior room. They're trying to get in." The door exploded inward, not from picks or leverage, but from a shaped charge that blew the lock mechanism apart. My ears rang. Smoke filled the space. Hands grabbed me before I could process movement. I fought. Got an elbow into someone's ribs. Heard a grunt. Then something hard connected with the side of my head, and the world tilted sideways. When things came back into focus, I was being half carried, half dragged through hallways I didn't recognize. Not the main house. Service corridors, maybe. My head pounded. Blood trickled warm down my temple. "Stop fighting," someone muttered in accented English. "Makes this harder for everyone." We emerged into cold night air. A van idled near a side gate I'd never seen before. They shoved me into the back. Zip ties bit into my wrists. Someone threw a hood over my head, and darkness swallowed everything. The drive felt endless. Every turn, every bump registered through my body pressed against metal floor. I tried counting minutes, tracking direction changes. Lost track after the first 10 turns. When the van finally stopped and they hauled me out, cold air hit like a slap. Industrial smells, oil, rust, something chemical I couldn't name. My feet scraped concrete. A door opened, closed. Echoes suggested large, empty space. They removed the hood. Warehouse, mostly empty. Overhead lights casting harsh shadows. And standing 20 feet away, watching me with dark, assessing eyes, was Arbin. I'd seen his photo in Nicholas's files. In person, he looked older, harder. Mid-30s, beard trimmed neat, expensive coat over tactical vest. A man who'd learned to blend legitimate businessman with organized criminal. "Ms. Turner," he said, accent thicker than the men who'd taken me. "I apologize for the rough transport. My people were instructed to be gentle. Your people hit me in the head and tied my wrists. Yes, regrettable. But you fought." He gestured, and someone cut the zip ties. Blood rushed back into my hands, pins and needles flooding my fingers. "Please, sit." There was a metal chair. I sat because standing felt precarious with my head still spinning. Arbin pulled over a crate, perched on it. Close enough to talk, far enough to avoid seeming threatening. "You know who I am," he said. Not a question. "Albanian Mafia. Currently trying to kill my—" I stopped, uncertain what word fit. Boyfriend felt absurd. Captor turned something complicated didn't roll off the tongue. "Trying to kill Nicholas. I'm not trying to kill him. I'm trying to hurt him." Arbin's expression didn't change. There's a difference. Semantics. Precision. He leaned forward slightly. 3 years ago, your Nicholas executed my brother. Put a bullet in his head, left his body in one of our warehouses with a message carved into his chest. This is what happens when you touch what's mine. I remembered Nicholas mentioning this. The pregnant woman. The children. Your brother killed innocent people during a territorial dispute, I said carefully. Nicholas responded to that. My brother was reckless. Ambitious beyond his competence. He pushed too far, ignored warnings, and yes, people died who shouldn't have. Arbin's voice stayed level, but something cold moved behind his eyes. I would have handled him myself eventually. Family discipline. But Nicholas didn't give me that chance. He made it public. Humiliating. A message to everyone that the Verzianis don't negotiate. So this is revenge. This is balance. He stood, paced slowly. He took someone I loved despite their flaws. I take someone he loves despite all his reasons not to. Then we're even. He'll come for me. I'm counting on it. Arbin stopped pacing, looked directly at me. That's the entire point. He'll come. He'll be emotional. He'll make mistakes. And in that window of vulnerability, I'll dismantle everything he's built. You're using me as bait. I'm using you as a mirror, showing him what loss feels like when you can't control the outcome. He tilted his head. Do you love him? The question caught me off guard. That's complicated. No. It's simple.
Either you do or you don't. He kidnapped me, threatened me, forced me into a fake relationship to lie to his dying grandmother. Those aren't great foundations for love, and yet you stayed after the arrangement ended. You chose to remain in his house, in his world, knowing the danger. Arbin's mouth curved slightly. That sounds like love to me. Messy, ill-advised love, but love nonetheless. I didn't answer. Couldn't argue because he was right. Hours crawled past. Arbin left periodically, came back, asked questions about Nicholas. I refused to answer. He didn't push, didn't threaten, just waited with the patience of someone playing a long game. My head stopped pounding. The cut on my temple clotted. Someone brought water and food I picked at mechanically. Then, maybe 4 hours in, commotion outside. Shouting in Albanian. Gunfire. Distant. Then closer. Arbin's expression sharpened. He pulled a handgun from his coat, checked the magazine with practiced efficiency. "He's here," he said, almost pleased. "Faster than I expected. Your boyfriend is either very capable or very desperate." "Both," I said. More gunfire. Closer now. The warehouse had multiple entry points, and Nicholas's people were hitting all of them simultaneously. Standard breach tactics, overwhelming force, coordinated assault. "On your feet," Arbin ordered. He grabbed my arm, hauled me up. Not gently, but not brutal either. "You're my insurance until this is over." He pulled me toward the back of the space, away from the main doors. His men formed a perimeter, weapons trained on entrances. Professional. Disciplined. Not panicking despite being outnumbered. The front door blew inward. Not explosives. Ramming vehicle. An SUV crashed through, metal shrieking, concrete chunks flying. Men poured through the gap, moving with lethal efficiency. I saw Nicholas immediately. He was at the center, directing movements, gun up, eyes scanning. When his gaze found me, everything in his face went still and sharp. "Let her go," he said, voice carrying across the space without shouting. "Now." "Or what?" Arbin pulled me closer, gun barrel pressing cold against my temple. "You'll shoot through her to get to me? Don't tempt me to test how fast my reflexes are versus yours. Your grandmother just died. You're grieving, emotional. Your reflexes are compromised." Arbin's arm tightened around my shoulders. "Put down your weapon. Order your men to stand down. We'll talk. We're done talking. Then she dies, right here. Is that what you want?" Silence fell, the kind that precedes violence. Nicholas lowered his gun slowly. Roberto, flanking him, looked ready to argue but stayed quiet. "Smart," Arbin said. "Now," I slammed my head backward into his face. Not hard enough to knock him out, but enough to break his grip. His gun shifted. I dropped, making myself small, and chaos erupted. Gunfire, shouting, bodies moving too fast to track. I scrambled behind a concrete pillar, arms over my head, trying to become invisible. The firefight lasted maybe 30 seconds. Verciani men had numerical advantage and better positioning. Arbin's people fought hard, but couldn't hold against coordinated assault. When it stopped, my ears were ringing again. Smoke hung in the air. Someone was screaming in Albanian, wounded. Nicholas appeared beside me, dropping to his knees. "Chloe, look at me." I met his eyes. Dark, wild, terrified. "I'm okay," I managed. "Not hit. I'm okay." He pulled me against his chest, one arm locked around me like he'd never let go. His heart hammered against my ear. For several seconds he didn't speak, just held on. "When I saw them take you," he said finally, voice rough, "I thought I'd failed again. Like Carla. Like everyone I couldn't protect. You found me. Not fast enough." Fast enough. I pulled back to look at him. Blood spattered his face. Not his, I thought. Is it over? Almost. He stood, pulling me up with him. Across the warehouse, Roberto had Arbin on his knees, hands behind his head. Blood leaked from his nose where I'd headbutted him. His expression was carefully blank. Nicholas approached slowly. I stayed close to his side. "You had her," Nicholas said quietly. "Gun to her head. My men outnumbered." You could have pulled the trigger any time in the last 6 hours. You didn't. Killing her would have been easy, Arbin replied. It also would have made me exactly what my brother was, someone who murders civilians to make a point. Your brother killed a pregnant woman and 2 children, and I've spent 3 years living with that shame. Arbin's jaw tightened. This was supposed to make us even. Take something you loved the way you took something I loved. But actually doing it, he stopped. I'm not my brother. Even when I wish I could be. Nicholas studied him for a long moment. Then, deliberately, he put his gun away. I could kill you right now. Self-defense. Protecting my territory. No one would question it. No one would care. Arbin agreed. But my grandmother just died asking me to be better than my worst instincts. And the woman standing beside me already saw me kill your brother. I don't want her to watch me kill you too. He gestured to Roberto. Take him. Get him medical attention. Then put him on a plane to anywhere that isn't Chicago. He doesn't come back. Ever. That's the deal. And if I refuse? Arbin asked. Then I let Roberto handle this. And his version of mercy is significantly less generous than mine. Roberto's expression confirmed that assessment. Arbin nodded slowly. Accepted. They hauled him up, started moving him toward the exit. As he passed me, he stopped. Take care of him, he said quietly. Men like us don't get many chances to be human. He's trying. That's rare. Then he was gone. And it was over. The ride back to the mansion was quiet. Nicholas sat beside me in the back of the SUV, fingers laced with mine, not speaking. Roberto drove. The sky was lightening. Dawn coming whether we were ready or not. At the house, paramedics checked me over. The head wound was superficial. Bruises would fade. Nothing broken. I was lucky, they said. Nicholas stayed close through all of it, watching like he expected me to disappear if he looked away. Later, when everyone else had gone to rest or debrief or whatever people did after gunfights, he found me in the library. You could have died, he said from the doorway. So could you. I'm used to that risk. You're not. I'm getting used to it faster than I'd like. I set down the book I'd been pretending to read. What happens now? Now you decide. He moved into the room, sat across from me. The contract is fulfilled. My grandmother died believing I found someone. The Albanian situation is resolved. You're free to leave with the money I promised. New identity if you want it. Protection until you're settled somewhere safe. And if I don't want to leave, then we figure out how to make this work. A life that's half yours, half mine. Entirely complicated. His eyes held mine. But that's your choice. I won't keep you here anymore. I thought about my apartment, my job, Amanda. The life I'd had 3 weeks ago that felt like it belonged to a different person. I need time, I said honestly. Time to think without anyone threatening me or asking me to lie to dying women or shooting at me. How much time? A few days, maybe a week. Somewhere quiet where I can process everything that's happened. I can arrange that. He stood, moved toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, I meant what I said. I love you. That's not going to change whether you stay or go. I know. After he left, I sat in the quiet library watching dawn light paint the walls gold and wondered what the hell I was going to do with a heart that had somehow decided loving a mafia boss was less insane than walking away from him. Eu sou o Claude. Não estou usando o chat GPT. Você está conversando comigo, Claude, da Anthropic. Vou escrever a parte 8 agora. Amanda's apartment looked exactly how I'd left it 3 weeks ago, but standing in her living room felt like visiting a museum of my old life. The same mismatched furniture, the same stack of magazines on the coffee table, the same framed photo of us from journalism school, both of us younger and convinced we'd change the world one story at a time. She'd picked me up from the hotel Nicholas had arranged, neutral ground he'd called it, somewhere I could think without his world pressing in from all sides. The drive over had been quiet. Amanda kept glancing at me like I might disappear if she looked away too long. Now, sitting on her couch with tea neither of us was drinking, the silence stretched thin. You've been gone almost a month, she finally said. And you show up looking like you've lived 3 lifetimes. It's been complicated. Complicated. She set her mug down carefully. Chloe, there were armed men watching my building. Professional security who vanished the day you texted saying you were taking time to think. That's not complicated. That's terrifying. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't explain anything. Her voice cracked slightly. You're my best friend. We tell each other everything. And you've been lying to me for weeks. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. I looked at her. Really looked. The worry lines around her eyes. The tension in her shoulders. I'd done this to her. Me and my terrible decisions in a parking garage. You're right, I said quietly. I should have trusted you. But the truth was so insane I didn't know how to explain it without sounding crazy. Try me now. So I did. I told her everything. The parking garage, Nicholas, the forced arrangement with his grandmother, the Albanians, the kidnapping, the warehouse. I left out some of the violence. Amanda didn't need those nightmares, but I didn't sugarcoat the danger or my own culpability in staying longer than the original contract required. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she stood up, walked to the window, stared out at Chicago's skyline. You fell in love with a mafia boss, she said flatly. I don't know if it's love exactly. Chloe. She turned around. You stayed after he gave you an out. You got kidnapped and still came back to him. That's love. Messy. Probably doomed. Definitely inadvisable love. But love, it's more complicated than that. Everything with you is complicated lately. She came back to the couch, sat down. The question isn't whether you love him. The question is whether you can actually build a life with someone whose world involves kidnappings and shootouts. I don't know. Then figure it out. Because I can't watch you destroy yourself for someone who might get you killed. Her eyes were wet now. You're all I have, Chloe. My only real family. If I lose you to his world, you won't. You can't promise that. She was right. I couldn't. We sat there for a while, the weight of impossible choices pressing down. Finally, Amanda said, What does he want you to do? He gave me a choice. Stay and try to make it work, or take the money and disappear into a new life somewhere safe. What do you want to do? I don't know. The admission hurt. Part of me wants to run as far as possible. The other part, I stopped. The other part can't imagine not seeing him again. That's the part that scares me. It scares me too. She reached over, took my hand. Whatever you decide, I'm here. Even if I think you're making a terrible mistake. Even if his world terrifies me. You're my person. You're mine too. Then don't vanish again without telling me. Deal? Deal. I stayed with Amanda for 3 days. We fell into familiar rhythms, cooking together, watching terrible movies, talking about everything except Nicholas. She told me about work, about the guy from accounting who kept asking her out, about the editor who was driving everyone crazy with impossible deadlines. Normal life, the kind I'd had before everything changed. On the 3rd night, my phone rang. Nicholas? I'd been texting him periodic updates. I'm fine, still thinking, need more time, but we hadn't actually talked. I answered on the 4th ring. Hi? Hi? His voice sounded tired. How are you? Processing. You? Running an organization while missing you more than is probably productive. A pause. I'm not calling to pressure you. I just wanted to hear your voice. Something in my chest twisted. I'm glad you called. Amanda treating you well? She threatened to kill you if you get me hurt. But yes, she's being amazing. Good. She should threaten me. I deserve it. Another pause. Roberto says the Albanian situation is fully resolved. Arben took the deal. He's out of Chicago permanently. You're safe now. That's good. It is. He exhaled slowly. Chloe, I need you to know something. Whatever you decide, I won't make it difficult. If you want to leave, really leave, I'll make sure you're protected and set up somewhere you can start over. No guilt, no obligations, no strings. I know. And if you want to stay, we'll figure it out together. But on your terms, not mine. Since when do you do anything on someone else's terms? Since I realized that controlling everything is just another way of being alone. His voice softened. My grandmother was right. I need to stop treating life like a business deal I can negotiate. That's very introspective for a crime boss. I've had a lot of time to think while you've been gone. A beat. I miss you. I miss you too. After we hung up, Amanda appeared in the doorway. That was him? Yeah. He sounds not like what I expected. What did you expect? Someone more threatening, more obviously dangerous. She tilted her head. He sounded lonely. He is lonely. That's part of the problem. Or part of the solution, Amanda said quietly. If you're both lonely, maybe you're less alone together. That's very philosophical. I'm full of wisdom tonight. She came over, sat beside me. You're going back to him, aren't you? I think so. Maybe. I don't know. I rubbed my face. Is that completely insane? Probably. But you've never made the safe choice when the interesting one was available. She bumped my shoulder. Just promise me you'll be careful, and that you'll call me more than once a week. I promise. And if he ever hurts you, I get to kill him. Deal. 2 days later, I was back in my own apartment for the first time in a month. It looked smaller than I remembered. Dustier. The plants were dead despite what I'm sure were Amanda's best efforts. I spent the afternoon cleaning, watering the corpses of my former houseplants, going through mail. Bills, mostly. A few work-related letters my editor had forwarded. Nothing urgent. My laptop sat on the desk where I'd left it. I opened it, pulled up the half-finished article I'd been working on before everything happened, read through it. The words felt like they belonged to a different person. I started writing something new instead. Not the Meridian Holdings story. That investigation had died when I witnessed Nicholas's transaction. Not a puff piece or lifestyle journalism. Something true. About power and choice and what it means to be complicit in worlds you never intended to enter. The words came slowly at first, then faster. I wrote for hours, barely noticing when daylight faded into evening. When I finally stopped, I had 7,000 words of something raw and honest and probably unpublishable in any mainstream outlet. But it was mine. My truth, my processing. My phone buzzed. Nicholas again. How's your apartment? He asked. Dusty. All my plants died. I'll buy you new ones. That's not how plants work. Then I'll buy you ones that are already alive. A pause. Can I see you? When? Tonight. Tomorrow. Whenever you're ready. I looked around my apartment, at the life I'd built that suddenly felt too small for the person I'd become. Tomorrow, I said. New Year's Eve. There's a party at the mansion, right? There was supposed to be. I canceled it after everything. Uncancel it. Chloe, I'm serious. Throw the party. Invite everyone. Show them you're still standing. I took a breath. And I'll be there. If you want me there. Silence stretched for several seconds. Of course I want you there, he said finally. But are you sure? That's a very public declaration. I'm sure. Or as sure as I'm going to get. I smiled even though he couldn't see it. Besides, I need to see if I can survive your world's idea of a party before I commit to anything long-term. That's a valid test. His voice carried relief and something warmer. I'll send a car. 7 p.m.? I can drive myself. Humor me. I'm still adjusting to letting you make your own choices. Fine. 7 p.m. After we hung up, I sat in the dark apartment feeling the weight of what I'd just agreed to. Going to that party meant stepping back into Nicholas's world visibly, publicly. Everyone there would know who I was, what I meant to him. It would make me a target again if anyone wanted leverage, but it would also make me a person instead of a secret. A choice instead of a coercion. New Year's Eve arrived wrapped in fresh snow and the kind of bitter cold that makes Chicago feel like a punishment. I spent the day carefully constructing armor. Hairstyled, makeup applied with precision. The emerald dress Nicholas had bought me pressed and perfect. Amanda came over to help, which mostly meant sitting on my bed offering commentary. You look like you're going to war, she observed. I kind of am. War in couture is still war. I'll remember that when someone tries to kill me. Not funny? Little bit funny. The car arrived exactly at 7. Not one of Nicholas's security team driving. Nicholas himself. He stood at my door in a perfectly tailored black suit, no tie, looking devastating and nervous in equal measure. You came yourself, I said. I wanted to make sure you didn't change your mind somewhere between your apartment and the mansion. He offered his hand. You look beautiful. You look terrified. I am terrified. You're walking back into my world voluntarily. That's either the best decision you've ever made or the worst, and I won't know which until it's too late to take it back. Comforting. I'm trying honesty. You said you wanted honesty. I did. I do. I took his hand. Let's go before I lose my nerve. The mansion glittered with lights and decorations, transformed from fortress to celebration venue. Music drifted from inside. Live band, not recorded. Expensive cars lined the drive. People in formal wear moved through rooms visible through windows. Nicholas led me inside, his hand at the small of my back. Conversations paused as we entered. Everyone turned to look. I recognized faces from the Christmas dinner. Rosaria, who smiled warmly. Don Salvatore, who raised his glass in salute. Roberto, who nodded approval. Others I didn't know but who clearly knew exactly who I was. Everyone, Nicholas said, his voice carrying across the room. You remember Chloe. Not, this is my girlfriend. Not, allow me to introduce. Just my name and the assumption that I belong there. Rosaria approached first, pulling me into a hug. You came back. Good. He's been impossible without you. I heard that, Nicholas said. You were meant to. She patted my cheek. Come. Let me introduce you to people who aren't criminals. We need balance. The evening unfolded in waves. Conversations with family members who asked polite questions about my work and didn't mention kidnappings. Business associates who assessed me with sharp eyes and apparently decided I was acceptable. Politicians who pretended not to recognize the criminal element surrounding them. Nicholas stayed close but not smothering, giving me space to navigate on my own while remaining available if I needed rescue. Around 11, I found him on the terrace overlooking the snow-covered gardens. He stood alone, breath misting in the cold. Hiding from your own party? I asked, joining him. Taking a break from performing. He glanced at me. You're doing well. Everyone likes you. Everyone's being polite because you're scary. That too. He turned to face me fully. You didn't have to come tonight. I would have understood if you'd changed your mind. I know. But I made a choice. I moved closer. I'm choosing you. Your world, your life, all the complicated, dangerous parts. I'm choosing it because the alternative is going back to who I was before, and I don't fit there anymore. You might regret this. Probably. But I'd regret not trying more. He pulled me close, kissed me slowly. When we broke apart, fireworks were starting somewhere in the distance. Almost midnight. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stuttered. Nicholas. Relax, it's not a ring. I'm not that presumptuous. He opened it. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant. A key. A key? To the house. To my life. To whatever you want it to mean. He took it out, fastened it around my neck. You're not a prisoner anymore. You're a partner, if you want to be. I want to be. Inside, someone started counting down. 10, 9, 8. We stood on the terrace in the cold, holding each other, while the party celebrated behind us. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year, Nicholas said against my lips. Happy New Year. 6 months later, I stood in the same garden, feeling the weight of the key pendant Nicholas had given me, and the new weight of his child growing inside me. The mansion had become home in ways I still couldn't quite believe. My laptop lived in the library now. My clothes filled half his closet. My terrible coffee addiction had infiltrated the kitchen, much to Maria's dismay. Amanda visited every week, still nervous about Nicholas's world, but gradually accepting that I'd made my choice and was sticking to it. We had lunch dates where she updated me on normal life, and I tried to pretend my life was anything approaching normal. Nicholas had shifted some of his business to more legitimate ventures, though I wasn't naive enough to think he'd gone completely clean. But he was trying, making space for a life that included more than just survival and revenge. And me? I was learning how to be a partner to someone whose world operated by rules I was still figuring out, writing stories that couldn't be published, but helped me process the absurdity of my new reality, preparing to become a mother in a house protected by armed guards. "You're thinking too loud," Nicholas said, appearing beside me in the garden. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, hands settling over where our baby was growing. "Just remembering." Remembering what? That night in the parking garage. If I'd made different choices, you'd be covering city council meetings and eating ramen in your apartment. That doesn't sound so bad. It sounds lonely. He turned me around to face him. "Are you happy? Really happy? Not just making the best of a bad situation?" I thought about it. The honest answer. I'm terrified most of the time. I'm still processing trauma. I'm bringing a child into a world that includes very real danger. I smiled. But yes, I'm happy. Because I'm not alone anymore. Neither are you. My grandmother would approve. Your grandmother knew before either of us did. She was perceptive like that. We stood in the garden where I'd once been a prisoner and was now something infinitely more complicated. Partners, lovers, a family in progress. Amanda was right. It was probably a terrible decision, but it was mine. And standing there with Nicholas's arms around me, our future uncertain but finally ours to shape, I couldn't bring myself to regret any of it. Not the parking garage, not the lies, not the danger, because all of it had led here. To a man who'd learned to love despite believing he couldn't. To a woman who'd learned to choose herself even in impossible circumstances. To a life built on honesty instead of coercion.